Welcome to Sectors Up Close. I'm Elena Casas. Today we're focusing on robotics and automation, and my guest is Joachim Klement, Head of Strategy at Liberium Capital. At last week's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, all the gadgets seemed to have developed a mind of their own, from automated airport wheelchairs to the hands-free smart baby stroller to the toy dog that rolls over at a voice command. These might not all seem very serious applications, but the business of automation is a vast one, valued at $175 billion in 2020. That was before the pandemic left employers desperate for staff and bringing in robots that can water plants, stack shelves and deliver food. 73% of companies in a Deloitte survey say they've now automated at least some tasks that used to be done by humans. That hasn't meant automatic returns for investors, though. This is the iShares Automation and Robotics ETF. It lost 26.7% in 2022, more than the S&P 500. Top holdings here include Lattice Semiconductors, Lasertech, Rockwell Automation, Intuitive Surgical, Smartsheet and Workday. So, will the rise of the robots raise those shares? Let's ask Joachim Klement of Liberium Capital. Joachim, hi, thanks for joining us. We've talked for years about automation replacing human workers, but is the automation now replacing the staff that employers can't find?
There are definitely two main driving forces for the renewed interest in automation. Number one is that we indeed have a labor shortage in the US and in other countries. That is driven by the baby boomers retiring as well as people retiring during the COVID pandemic. The second driver is that throughout the last 2 to 3 years, we've learned that supply chain disruptions can be really harmful. So businesses are thinking about how they can become less dependent on deliveries and supplies from China and other Southeast Asian countries. And there are two ways to do it. First, geographically diversify, finding other suppliers in other parts of the world, or bring back production to your home country and replace labor with machinery and automatize production.
But is that as cost effective as hiring low-cost labor in Southeast Asia?
That depends very much on where you are trying to automatize. Yes, automatization is a capital expenditure, and it will be more cost-effective only after a number of years. At the moment, in most sectors, we are neck and neck whether it is more cost-effective to automatize or rely on suppliers in emerging markets. But with technology progressing so fast, the balance is shifting more and more in favor of automatization.
It is, though, as you said, a significant investment for companies, and we are heading into a global recession, according to most forecasts, where CapEx, according to one study, is forecast to fall 19% this year. So is that going to put a brake on some of this growth in automation?
Yes, the sector is definitely a very cyclical sector, and companies like Rockwell Automation, for example, are facing a tough time in 2023 because companies are cutting back on their investments and on their CapEx. However, there are less cyclical components in that sector. I particularly like, in that respect, the software and automation software providers, whether we're talking about Salesforce or SAP, which have more stable earnings and require less CapEx in order to help businesses automatize their production processes.
You say more stable earnings, but Salesforce did lay off a couple of thousand people last week as tech goes into a downturn. These companies were very highly valued during the pandemic, and many would say they are still overvalued in some cases. What do you think?
Well, there are definitely adjustments that need to be made. The cost cutting is helping in order to preserve margins. The other thing that helps with these companies is that their business model is reliant on more regular and dependable cash flows from essentially subscription services that they sell. And that should keep valuations relative to the more cyclical companies in the sector at a higher level.
If investors are trying to explore perhaps more risky technological innovation, what companies do you find exciting in this space?
Well, in the industrial automatization and as well as in drug manufacturing, automatization is very well advanced. Where the progress is made these days is in surgical automatization, and here Intuitive Surgical is a company that is at the forefront of these new technologies, but also in agriculture. Automatizing farming and ranching is something that is happening as we speak. And then more nascent areas are services. Whether we're talking about hotels, restaurants, or other services for retail, they are increasingly automatized with robots, with chatbots, and other automatization techniques.
For investors then who are trying to capitalize on the trend, what do you recommend?
I think if you have a 3 to 5 year time horizon, buying an ETF like the one you mentioned is probably the right solution. If you want to be more selective, I would suggest going for the software and more stable earners like SAP, for example, and use weakness in companies that are more cyclical, like Rockwell Automation or like ABB, to buy at a later stage this year in order to benefit from lower prices.
Well, thanks so much for that insight, Joachim Klement, Head of Strategy at Liberium Capital. Well, that's your roundup of the robotics and automation sector. I'm Elena Casas, and this is Reuters.